Boykin is a TV and film producer, national political commentator, New York Times bestselling author, and a former White House aide to President Bill Clinton. His latest book is Race Against Time: The Politics of a Darkening America. Fearlessly rejecting respectability politics, Keith embraces all parts of his identity and empowers others to do the same.
In a recent post of yours, Keith, you provided this important reminder for all of us. And I quote, "Remember, the point of life is to live." With the many hats that you've worn in your life, from actor to author to aide at the White House, is there a particular professional hat that made you feel personally most alive?
Well, thank you for that question. I was a little chuckling a bit when I heard the word actor, because I'd never really been an actor, although at some point I thought I might be, but I never actually was a working actor. But I have been a producer, I've been a writer, an author, a TV commentator, a lawyer, a reality show participant, and a few other jobs, a teacher or professor, and some other things I can't think of. And I don't know that any one job defines me. And in fact, I'm working on a new book now called Quitting, Why I Left My Job to Live My Life with Freedom. Mm-hmm. And part of it is because I don't think that I find value or definition for myself solely in a job title. I find it in trying to do work that has meaning to me, that I think work that makes a difference, work that helps to make an impact on people's lives. So I can't think of any one hat, I would say, that would describe that best. I think the title I like best is human. I like the fact that I get to live my life with freedom, and to do so in a way that works for me. One day that might mean being a writer, another day it might mean being a producer, another day it might mean being a TV commentator or an author or a lawyer or whatever else. It's just, I like the flexibility that comes with being human and being free.
Nice. And so it's not necessarily what the hat is, but how you wear it, right? Exactly.
Awesome. I should put on a hat now just to demonstrate the point.
So I want to get back to that quote that I just referenced. So the second part of it was, don't work so hard that you forget to smell the roses along the way. And often we get so caught up in the race of life that we forget to slow the pace on occasion to simply just enjoy it. My question for you now, Keith, is what are some of the simple pleasures in your life that you enjoy?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. It always reminds me of the quotation from Alice Walker's book, The Color Purple, where she says, I think it pisses God off if you walk past the color purple in the field somewhere and don't notice it. And I think that there's so much beauty in the world that we just take for granted. The fact that we're alive, that we get to be a part of this planet right now, to share with so many other people, to share the experience of being human. I live here in Los Angeles now, and I love every day that I get to wake up and have this beautiful view behind me of the city. I love seeing the palm trees swaying in the wind. I love just the simple pleasures of life. Just a moment before, I was eating my favorite little morning snack, which is I have warmed cashews and almonds and mango chunks separately. And I just kind of, like, in the past few months, kind of got addicted to this little thing. But there are so many little pleasures in life that, you just you take for granted. I love that I have freedom, most of all. I love that I get to go to the gym every day. I mean, I go to the gym mostly every weekday when I'm at home. I love that I just get to be me and be free. And I get to control what happens on my day and in my days on a regular basis, and not have someone else tell me where I have to be and when I have to be there.
Yeah, certainly a lot to be said for that, and that we do need to pause just and appreciate that. So I'd like to, in speaking about the racing through life, I want to talk more about race. In your latest book, Race Against Time: The Politics of a Darkening America, you share your own personal stories in a book about race and politics. You recognize a growing fear of a darkening America, a country in which there is no longer a predominantly white majority. My question for you is, as a Black man in politics, what have you personally witnessed?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been involved in politics since I was a teenager, going back to high school. And I've seen so many changes during that time period. When I worked on the campaign for Michael Dukakis for president in 1988, I worked on Bill Clinton's campaign in 1992. I went to law school with President Barack Obama. Back in the day, in the late 80s and early 90s, I don't think I think a lot of what's happened today would have been inconceivable, both the good and the bad. I don't think people would have conceived, I wouldn't have conceived in the late 80s and 90s that we'd have a Black president by now. And Barack Obama, my classmate or schoolmate, would be that president. I didn't imagine we would have marriage equality by now for LGBTQIA people. I didn't imagine that we would be as far as we are in some respects on some issues in our country. But I also understood that there was this tension that whenever there was progress in America, that progress was met with a backlash. So the fact that we have had so much progress it's not surprising to me then that there would be so much of a backlash, that we would have the rise of a Donald Trump following a Barack Obama, that we would have the rise of fascism in our country, the rise of white supremacy and white nationalism, that we would have this division in our country that is unprecedented, I think, except at least in recent times. You'd have to go back some decades before you find an equivalent to what we're experiencing today. And I guess I've seen this personally up close because I've been both an insider and an outsider. An insider in terms of working in the White House, working in the establishment, and outsider in terms of being a protester, being an observer, and watching what's happened with the Black Lives Matter movement. The most interesting moment I can think of with that for me personally was that couple of years ago, I was covering a Black Lives Matter protest in New York City, and I was arrested for simply covering the protest on the West Side Highway in Manhattan. And the police, even after I told them that I was with the press, they refused to do anything about it. They arrested me. And yeah, I don't know if you're going to say something or not.
Oh no, I'm just like, oof.
Yeah, it pissed me off too, because I'd been covering protests for decades and never in my life had ever been arrested, never even thought about the possibility of being arrested. I certainly wasn't trying to be arrested. And it pissed me off because it happened the day after one of my CNN colleagues, Omar Jimenez, was arrested on air, live on air, while he was covering a George Floyd protest in Minneapolis. And he was arrested in the same protest where one of our white colleagues, Josh Campbell, was not arrested for covering the same exact protest. And even as observers, you know, as African Americans or people of color, when we try to sort of quote unquote objectively report on something or observe something, we're still caught up in the whole sort of dragnet of racism in America.
Right. Wow. And yeah, so it's interesting for you to see it, the inside and the outside of it, and to have the perspective you have that's, you know, balanced in that way, is really interesting. You know, it seems to me that time is really not on our side. And speaking to what you just said, with the division in our country that's growing more and more every day along both racial and political lines, how do we begin to redirect? What steps do we need to take, Keith, in your opinion, to save our union?
Well, you know, it's interesting you say time is not on our side, because I think I look at it a little differently, because I think, you know, my last book is called Race Against Time, The Politics of a Darkening America. And the argument I make in that book is that the fear of time is what's motivating a lot of the backlash in our country. That a lot of white Americans are fearful of the change. They've seen a Black president now for 8 years. They've seen a Black woman vice president. They've seen now a Black woman on the Supreme Court. They see that we had a woman who ran for president, got more votes than the white man who quote unquote defeated her. They see that we have marriage equality in all 50 states. They know that by the year 2050, in the next 30 years, I should say. They know that the Latino population will be the majority in at least 5 states in our country. They know that the Asian American population is growing rapidly, and they see all these trend lines, along with the most jarring of all, the Census Bureau report that white Americans will no longer be the majority of this country by the 2040s. And they see that, and that's why they're afraid that time is not on their side. And they're doing everything they can to stop this progress from taking place, to stop the counting of votes if necessary, to stop the transfer of power, a peaceful transfer of power from one president to another, to stop people from being able to vote, to gerrymander congressional districts and to rig elections to make sure they stay in power regardless of the change in democracy. And here's the thing: if you look at this is going back to your previous question, how the country has changed.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduated from college in '87, at that point, I worked for the Dukakis campaign. He lost, and after that, at that point, Democrats had lost the presidency in 5 of the previous 6 elections, and it looked hopeless. But since that time, Democrats have actually won the popular vote in the presidential elections in 7 of the last 8 races. So the tide has shifted as the country has diversified, and that's what scares people. So I don't think that time is necessarily against us, but I don't necessarily think time is for us either. I go back to what Dr. King said. Dr. King once warned that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And he worried that people would assume that simply thinking that the passage of time would cure all of our ills, when it doesn't. So I use that as a motivator. I think we have to be engaged to use our time wisely. Because the people who are trying to stop change, who want to take away the rights of women and people of color and others, they're using their time very constructively and productively, and have been for the past 5 decades. So we have to be as judicious and careful and strategic in the way we use our time.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. So I want to go back to your words. So a different post of yours. And I quote, "I'm bringing sexy back. Not the song, not the song, of course, but the part of my identity that fearlessly rejects respectability politics." I love this post of yours. So for those who are unfamiliar with the term respectability politics, I would love for you to share the definition in words of your own, and why people need to understand these words.
Well, respectability politics is basically an idea that we have to engage in behavior in public that is respectable for the outside world. Because if we don't, then people are going to look at us differently. So if we're Black, we have to always be upstanding and speak properly and so forth. If we're women, we have to behave in a way that doesn't cause harm to the community of women. If we're LGBTQIA people, we have to make sure that we're not too sexual or not too overt in our behavior or anything like that. And I'm saying that we have to reject all those labels because they're used to confine and define us. They're used to put us in boxes, and they frame the argument in the context that doesn't allow us to identify ourselves in all the different ways in which we show up. So yes, there are good and bad people in every community. There are people have all different sorts and ranges of behaviors and patterns, and we should be able to embrace that. We don't have to be to fit into some sort of box where we all have to dress properly in dresses and ties and look a certain way and talk a certain way to be deserving of respect. It's terrifying to me that, I remember a lot of these incidents where a lot of these Black kids have been killed over the years, and we keep hearing stories about, well, this person wasn't an angel, or this person, had this in their past. This person smoked weed or something like that. And I say it shouldn't matter whether you're an angel or not. All of us are entitled to be treated with respect and dignity. And all of us have the right to live our lives as full human beings, and not necessarily fitting into somebody else's definition. So how that operates for me as a Black gay man, a lot of it is the people try to put me in boxes and feel like, well, you shouldn't be too you shouldn't be too sexual or too oddish. You shouldn't post thirst traps on social media. And I feel like, I'm a single guy. I can do whatever I want unless there's somebody who I'm involved with who doesn't want me to do it. But I feel like in terms of my life, I shouldn't have to show up in a way that's presentable to the public in order for you to take me seriously. And that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people, because there's so many people, even within our own communities, who are trying to make us fit into those boxes.
Down with the boxes. We should be past the boxes. So thank you for describing and defining as you did. So in a time where we find ourselves defined and undermined by social constructs, you end that post, that very same post of yours that I just referenced. I'm embracing all the various parts of my identity, and I hope you feel empowered to do the same. I love this too. It's not enough to acknowledge someone's pronouns or accept someone's preference. Appreciation is required as individuals and as a society. So in these divided times, my last question for you is this. It's, how do we cultivate that appreciation in our society?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We have to go past tolerance and old-fashioned sort of acceptance and to figure out a way to get to appreciation. Well, part of it is a re-understanding of what diversity means in our country. There's a big focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the US these days in corporate America, but how serious is it? And in order to make it serious, it means we have to go beyond just sort of allowing people into the room, but appreciating what they have to say when they're in the room, appreciating their voices and the different ways in which they may communicate, which is a difficult thing for some people to do. And so how do we cultivate that? Well, part of it is changing the sort of the mindset that we use. I was brought up and taught the old melting pot analogy for America. But this is all a melting pot. We're all brought together and we all come out as one because of that, e pluribus unum, so to speak. And I don't believe that anymore. I believe in sort of what I call a salad bowl analogy for America, which is if you have a salad, you have different parts of it. You might have lettuce and spinach and tomatoes and onions and mushrooms and carrots and dressing and all these different things. And you don't mush them together in a blender and make them one. Yeah. You eat them and they come to you and they have different flavors and taste and textures and that's how you appreciate it. And that's what our country is. I hate when people say, oh, I don't see race. I don't see color or whatever. We don't want to be ignored. We don't want people to ignore our differences. We want to be appreciated for those differences. We don't want to be mistreated for those differences either. We want to be appreciated. A cherry tomato is not the same as an olive, which is not the same as a carrot, which is not the same as a mushroom. They all add some different flavor to the salad, and so we all should appreciate those different things.
Well, I love that. And with that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I thought it just went out for a second. I thought it was frozen for a second.
Oh. Okay. No, I just meant to say that, with all of that said, what a beautiful analogy. And now, in addition to being hungry, I am very thankful for you and for taking your time. Such an honor, such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I want to thank you for your time and also just for helping all of us become a bit more aware now. Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you so much.
Take care.